G'day and welcome back to RC Model Reviews. Today, part 2 of the HobbyKing Tundra. That's this thing here, which barely fits into my studio. So, here you go, look at this. The HobbyKing Tundra, a big plane. Forget how many millimeters, but it's got heaps of millimeters. There you go, see all the way from there to there. And I've done part 1, I talked about the various aspects of the build and so forth. And today I went out and I flew the snot out of it for quite some time. Went through quite a few battery packs. And one thing I discovered is it does suck a lot of juice. Now this is a 12-inch prop and there's quite a big motor in there, so it does really suck the batteries. I was flying with relatively small batteries, 1500 milliampere hour 35C batteries. They held up to the drain okay, didn't sag till they were nearly flat, but they didn't last all that long because, you know, relatively low capacity. So you probably want a 2200 in here, but it depends. I went for the lower capacity batteries because they're lighter, and I wanted to keep this thing as light as possible so that I could give you a pretty good indication of how the stall performance went. And it stalls pretty good, but it's not without some things you might want to know about before you go and plonk your money down on one of these. For a start, there is a huge amount of pitch change with flap application. Even small amounts of flap, 15 to 20 degrees, will produce quite a pronounced nose up effect if you've got power on. And it's very much dependent on power. I know a lot of people will be saying, well, you should just mix in some down elevator with the flap. But it's not that simple, because if you have no power on and you put full flap on, then it actually puts its nose down and it actually comes down at a reasonably steep angle quite slowly. There's not a lot of speed left to flare at the bottom, so you can't really use too much flap on the descent unless you're ready to add power and flare it out the bottom. But yeah, under the glide, the flaps have no real pitch up effect. Put the power on, however, and suddenly, whoa! And in fact, to show you just how much pitch up effect there is, I flew there earlier on, and this is a loop I did without touching the elevators. I was flying 2/3 throttle, level flight, and I pulled on full flap. And just look at this, quite a tight loop from simply using the flap. So when you crank the flaps on, if you're not ready with the elevator, you'll get into trouble. And the other thing I noticed is that when you've got a lot of flap on, the ailerons, it actually gets a bit rickety-rockety. Now, I mentioned that this plane has washout on the wingtips, that the wingtips are a slightly lower angle than the rest of the wing, which means that, in theory, the center of the wing stalls first so that you don't drop a wing. But when I did the stall test, first of all, I did the stall test with no flap, and it's pretty sedate. It mushes around and it wobbles. It was wobbling a bit from side to side, and then I recovered. When I did it with more flap on, however, it wobbled a bit and then it dropped a wing. So with enough flap on, this will drop a wing. So be very careful of that. With a stall aircraft, you've got to be flying right on the edge of the stall, but you can't go past that because this will drop a wingtip. And if you're not quick enough to recover it, it'll make a dent in the ground. Not such a good look. So this is not an easy plane to fly if you've got the flaps on at any degree. Without the flaps, it flies like any high wing trainer, super easy to fly, nice, sedate. It is a bit faster than I thought it would be, though. Maybe it's because it's a bit heavier. I compared it to the FMS Super Easy Trainer. The FMS flies slower than this without the flaps. So it's because the FMS is lighter, it's got a little bit more wing area. So that will fly nice and slowly. You don't need any skill to fly the FMS slowly. Slowing this down, you're going to have to spend a bit more time banging those sticks because, as I say, you get near the stall with any flap on and it's really getting wobbly, and you've got to be very careful not to just go past the stall and end up, dropping a wing quite severely. Now, it is aerobatic, it'll do loops, it'll do rolls. The rolls are not as axial as I'd like, but hey, this isn't an aerobatic model, it's designed for stall, so it rolls perfectly well for a model of this type, this caliber. Takeoff runs are plenty short if you've got the flap on. Only thing you've got to watch is if you try and take off with full flap, you really have to nail the elevator, almost full down, to stop it from doing a big loop. So my takeoff strategy is, if you want to do really short takeoffs, almost full flap, nail the throttle, and as soon as it lifts off, start winding the flaps up, which brings me to another point. If you want to get the most out of this model, you're going to have to put your flaps on a slider, like on this is a high-tech Aurora 9. You're going to have to put your flaps on a slider. The Tyrannus is perfect, it has sliders on the side, because you will find yourself actually manipulating the flaps quite a bit during flight. Otherwise, it's battling all that pitch up. So you really need to have that. If you've got yourself something like a Turnigy 9X or a 9XR, not so good, because if you're going to have them on a switch, as soon as you flip that switch, if you don't have a delay, it's going to pitch right up. Whoa, what's going on there? You're going to be really nailing the elevator to push the nose down. And even if you put it on a delay, there's still going to be, it's still going to take a while you just don't have the level of control. There's no slider, there's no proportional control of your flaps. And if you put it on a knob, well, that's even worse, because if you want to put your flaps on, you'll have to take your hands off the stick to twiddle the knob. And as you're winding in the flap, it'll be pitching up, and you've got no way of countering it because your hand is, maybe you could do it with this one. You're going to have to hold the knob with one hand and fight the yeah, it's just nowhere near the same experience if you don't have sliders. So I've always been an advocate of sliders on radios, and really, this is one perfect example of why you should have a slider on your radio if you're going to fly the Tundra, because it just enables you to really enjoy the flying experience so much more. And ideally, you want one that has a nice indent, so you can set that for like the normal approach flap and then full flap if you just want to come down. Because I asked myself, why would you use full flap on this thing? Because it's just an air brake. And that's the great thing. You can have the thing almost directly above your head, pull on full flap, push the nose straight down, and it will come down. And when you level out, it won't be going fast. It'll just land. Makes for great short field landings, because you can come in very steep. If you're flying where there's a lot of trees, you can go fly over the trees, come straight down, and then land. Timing's important, and also I find it helps. You're going to be ready to let off a little flap so that you can actually get the thing flying as well, and be ready to put some power on, and a lot of elevator work. But hey, it is a great challenge. I find this Tundra model to be a great challenge, and for that reason, if you're getting bored flying around just with a normal 4-channel trainer, then the Tundra is going to be great, because it will behave just like a 4-channel trainer. But when you're ready for some excitement, learning some new stuff, mastering new techniques, those flaps change the model significantly and make it a lot harder to fly, but a lot more rewarding, because you can do some really cool stuff you can't do with a regular trainer. So there you go. Yeah, I've got to say, the Tundra, it's not the model I was expecting. In that respect, in some areas I was a little bit disappointed because of that massive pitch change with the flaps. But I mean, I had this ideal model in mind, and it's not. It's a really good model, and it does what it says on the box, so you can't really grizzle. As I say, batteries are important. It does suck a lot of juice. It has unlimited vertical out of the box. So you're going to have a high C battery and reasonable capacity if you want to get any reasonable flight times. Don't go throwing in a 20C, 1600 LiPo. It's going to get too hot, and you won't get the performance. I've actually, very rarely do I run a battery flat in a model. I've run 3 batteries flat in the Tundra, because having so much fun, using so much power, especially when I'm trying to do stall takeoffs and landings, and the batteries don't hold enough juice. Eventually you run out. And yeah, great. So there you go. I'd have to say this is a 4.5 out of 5. There are some things I'd like to change if I could, but for example, those counter aerodynamic counterbalances, I did catch some grass in the aerodynamic counterbalances, and it rips the grass stalk off. Puts a bit of a strain on the tail if you've got a lot of that stuff. Yeah, I said it would happen, but the carbon held up fine. No problems at all. There you go. Now, if there's any questions you've got about the Tundra, please leave them in the usual place. I'll do my best to answer them. In the meantime, if you're thinking of buying a Tundra, you're probably not going to be disappointed with your purchase. I'm certainly going to be doing some more flying on mine. It's taken me a whole day to get to grips with mastering the flap application and the throttle and coordinating all my control inputs. And also, it flies a bit like a cub. You do need to use some rudder in the turns. If you don't, the tail hangs down. You've got to kick the tail up with the rudder. So if you're not used to using your left thumb to add rudder, you might want to mix in a bit of rudder with your ailerons just to make it handle nicer. But I like to have them separately, because sometimes you want to split your sticks. If you want to side slip in, you need to put left aileron, right rudder, or whatever to do a landing. And if you've got mixing, and that gets in the way. So I don't like mixing. I just like to fly. Learn to fly. Learn to use your thumb. If you've never used your thumb before, go and buy a model helicopter or a drone, because that will teach you how important side to side with your left thumb really is. You can't fly a helicopter or a drone without your left thumb going left to right. And those skills translate perfectly to fixed wing models like the Tundra. There you go. Thanks for watching. I've had a really good day. I'm hot and sweaty. I'm going to clean up a little bit now, and then I go home, render this video, and I might have a nice cold beer. Thanks for watching. See you soon.
battery when that happens.
Sucks the battery to the thing. That was it. Battery just died. I don't recommend this for beginners. This flaps on. Try and do a flippy landing. It is so hard to fly with those flaps right down. I have to try again. It's so, in these turbulent conditions, man, you just don't want to use that much flap, eh? So we'll go up here and we'll do a full flap descent. No, not going to make it. I have to come from right up. I've got it almost vertically overhead with this wind to get a full flap descent. Try it again. Okay, I'm going to try out the stall now, just with the flaps. Without any flaps on, we'll do a stall. Here we go, full up elevator. There's not really much of a stall there. It was starting to waggle a wing a bit, so it's a pretty benign stall. Gives you plenty of warning. Now what I'll do is I'll go a bit higher, because I'm feeling this is not going to be so pleasant. I'll crank on 30 degrees of flap, and we'll try the stall. Here we go, full up elevator. Oh no, that's really just kind of a mush. Well, there we go, drop the wing. Whoa! So, not totally benign. It will drop a wing if you push it. Something to consider. Something to really consider. It's the FMS Super Easy Trainer doesn't drop a wing. This does. Even though it's got some washout on those wingtips, it'll still drop a wing if you're not careful. Go. Beautiful. There we go. It wasn't particularly slow. Wasn't particularly slow. So let's try a whole lot more flap now. In fact, what I'm going to do is needs more rudder throw. I'm going to do a really short takeoff into wind across the strip. Whoa, look at that. Wants to fly. Oh. That's just a gust of wind. So we're going to try some stall stuff now. Let's try full flap. Actually, no, we'll use that much flap because you don't need full flap for takeoffs. It's not a good idea to use full flap. So here we go. See how quickly you can get off the ground. That was pretty quick, but I'm feeding in a lot of down there. Put the flaps up. Try a stall landing. Full flap on now. There we go. That was alright. One thing I've noticed though with this model is the flaps produce a huge nose up pitching effect. And I'll show you what I mean. I'm going to do a loop using just the flaps. Let's come out here. And pretty turbulent up there. I'm going to do a loop just using the flaps. So I've got a bit of speed on. Full flap. There we go. No elevator, just flap. That was quite impressive. Full flap. One thing you notice on these approaches though when I want to do stall, if I put enough flap on I can really push the nose of this thing down and I don't gain much speed at all. See, I'm coming down really steeply. but I really have to use the elevators to hold the nose down when I put power on. There you go, stop. Right, what else can I say? Not very much. I'll show you what it's got a lot of power, more power than you'll ever need. I'm going to go full power now and do vertical. Let's show you the unlimited vertical. But I'll leave the flaps off because I want to do a hover. I'll try hovering it. That was alright. Put full flaps on and we'll just bring it down real steep again. As you can see, this is full flap, hardly speeds up at all. Take the flap off. And we'll try another landing with just a few degrees of flap on. Need a lot of power with those flaps on. There you go. Pretty simple. It flies as it says on the box.